My wife demanded, "I need access to your inheritance or I'm leaving." I said, "Leave." Then she thought I was bluffing until she saw I'd moved the funds into an irrevocable trust that specifically excludes spouses. Her lawyer's reaction was priceless. I'm Marcus, 35, mechanical engineer, born and raised in Ohio. A year ago, I buried my father after a long, cruel fight with cancer. Watching him fade took pieces of me I don't think I'll ever get back. Dad wasn't loud or dramatic. He was the kind of man who built things with his hands, solved problems without complaining, and believed in preparing for the future even when the present looked fine. He spent decades growing a small aerospace manufacturing company from a garage operation into something real. He sold it just a few years before he got sick, invested the proceeds, and kept everything clean, organized, and intentional. When he passed, everything was split equally between my sister, Lauren, and me. After taxes and the division, my share came out to exactly $823,000. A number I still remember the way someone remembers the weight of an anchor tied to their chest. Erica, my wife of 6 years, knew all of this. She'd been with me when Dad was deteriorating, even sat with me during his worst nights. Back then, I believed her presence meant loyalty. I thought grief had brought us closer. But looking back, maybe that time only revealed the fractures that were already hiding in the dark. When the estate settled, I opened a separate investment account under my name at a different bank. I told her everything the same day, the amount, the statements, the plans Dad had laid out before he passed. I showed her the numbers because honesty had always been the backbone of our marriage, or so I thought. She said all the right comforting words, even touched my arm gently and told me Dad would be proud of me, proud of how I was handling everything. That sincerity lasted all of 3 weeks. The first shift was tiny. We were sipping our morning coffee, the kind of quiet Sunday where sunlight makes everything look softer than it is, when she casually said, "You know, the kitchen's looking outdated. We should remodel. Maybe just 30 grand. We'd get it back when we sell." Our kitchen had been renovated 5 years earlier. Stainless steel appliances, quartz counters, open shelving she insisted upon. Nothing about it was old, just familiar. When I said, "It still looks fine," she laughed lightly, like I was missing something obvious, and added, "Your dad would want us to enjoy the money." The second shift came 2 days later. "Well, my car's getting old," she said while staring at her 2019 Honda Accord with barely 40,000 miles. It wasn't old by any stretch. Her voice, though, that had changed. There was a hunger behind the words, something I'd never noticed before. From that moment, every conversation, whether it began with career frustrations, travel fantasies, rental property ideas, or dreams of going back to school, somehow spiraled back to the inheritance. Always. Without fail. It was like she'd found a single thread and refused to let go. Then came the night that split everything open. It was a normal Tuesday. I'd made chicken parmesan, Dad's old recipe. Erica put down her fork halfway through the meal and stared at me with a look that didn't belong to the woman I married. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, like she'd rehearsed something. "Marcus," she said, voice steady, "I want you to add me to your inheritance account." I froze mid-chew. What? I should have full access. We're married. What's yours is mine, that's how partnerships work. It felt like someone poured ice water into my veins. "That's my dad's money," I muttered. "And you're my husband," she shot back. "Real partners share everything." I tried explaining, gently at first, that the inheritance wasn't marital property. That she wasn't excluded from knowing about it, only from controlling it. But she didn't want explanation, she wanted ownership. She leaned forward with this cold, practiced look. "So you don't trust me with money? That's not what this is. Then add me to the account." I felt something inside me settle, the quiet certainty that no matter what I said, she had already made up her mind. Then she gave me the ultimatum. Her exact words, either you give me full access, or I'm leaving. I will not stay in a marriage where I'm treated like I can't be trusted. She expected panic. She expected bargaining. She expected me to fold the way she'd seen other men fold when faced with ultimatums wrapped in the threat of abandonment. But I didn't panic. I didn't bargain. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, then leave. Shock hit her first. Then rage. Then disbelief so sharp it twisted her entire face. You don't mean that, she whispered. I absolutely do, I said. You're the one threatening to end our marriage over money. Not me. Her chair scraped across the hardwood as she stood up. Fine, she snapped. I'll stay with my mom until you calm down. She didn't pack. Didn't say goodbye. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded eerily final. I sat there for a long time, staring at the meal I'd made. The chicken grew cold. Silence settled around me, thick and suffocating. I thought maybe I misunderstood something, maybe I'd been too harsh, but no. She had been crystal clear. Give me access or the marriage is over. I called my sister that night. Her first words after I explained everything, you need a lawyer. She gave me the number of an estate planning attorney she trusted. I met him the next afternoon. Old school office, real wood paneling, the smell of polished leather. He listened without saying a word until I finished. Then he leaned back and said the sentence that would shape the months ahead, your wife just told you exactly who she is. Believe her. He laid out the plan, an irrevocable trust, airtight, explicitly excluding spouses so thoroughly the language would make a judge raise an eyebrow. Bulletproof, he'd called it. Once created, even I couldn't reverse it. Do it, I said. He smiled. Your father raised you well. That night, Erica texted. Have you calmed down? Ready to talk like adults? No, I replied. Well, I'm serious. I won't stay in this marriage if you keep treating me like I'm untrustworthy. Okay, I wrote back. Then you're choosing to leave. Her last message, wow. Just wow. 2 weeks later, she was gone from the house entirely. Her clothes, toiletries, even her key left behind on the counter like a full stop at the end of a sentence. By the time the trust finalized, every dollar transferred, every clause airtight, she'd already filed for divorce. And that was only the beginning. The divorce papers arrived in a flat manila envelope, the kind that looks heavier than it is because of what it represents rather than what it weighs. I found it on my front porch when I came home from work, propped up against the door like some kind of quiet accusation. Inside, there it was, the formal petition. Filed in Erica's name. Her attorney was some guy called Thomas Hayden, small local practice, nothing flashy. Later, out of curiosity, I looked him up and saw reviews that hovered right around mediocre. At the time, though, all I saw were the words she was asking for, spousal support, half the house, and, almost laughably, half of my inheritance. I remember standing at the kitchen counter with the papers spread out, feeling the old numbness returning, the same kind I'd felt reading my dad's final medical reports. Words on pages that said, nothing will be the same again. Lauren put me in touch with a divorce lawyer she knew, Patricia Reyes. Late 50s, sharp eyes, short hair, tailored suits. She had the calm presence of someone who didn't need to raise her voice to win a fight. When I sat in her office for the first time, she slid the petition across her desk and read through it with an expression that gradually shifted from neutral to amused. She wants half your inheritance, Patricia said finally, tapping the relevant line with her pen. That's ambitious. She can't get that, right? I asked, even though I already knew the legal basics. But fear makes you doubt everything. Patricia looked up at me, one eyebrow raised. That money is in an irrevocable trust, specifically structured to keep it separate from marital assets. She doesn't know she has zero claim yet. She's about to learn. There was something oddly reassuring about her confidence. She started outlining our response: standard division of marital assets, house equity split, retirement accounts divided according to state law, joint checking handled fairly. And then, very clearly, the inheritance listed as separate property, untouchable in the trust. Within a week, Patricia had everything filed. Erica's lawyer requested financial discovery, likely thinking he'd find something sloppy or hidden. Instead, we sent them everything. 3 years of bank statements. Retirement accounts. Pay stubs. Tax returns. And the trust documents, 63 pages of them, with the paragraphs excluding spouses carefully highlighted. A few days later, Patricia called me. When I picked up, I could hear the smile in her voice. "Listen to this," she said. Then she put her phone on speaker and played a voicemail. I recognized the voice as Erica's lawyer. Patricia, hi, this is Tom. We need to discuss this trust situation. My client wasn't fully aware of the structure here. I think we should schedule a settlement conference. I'm sure we can work something out." Patricia actually laughed. "He wants to settle," she said. "He just realized his client has been banking on money she will never see." When she said it like that, it sounded almost simple. But knowing Erica, I knew simple was the last thing this would be. The settlement conference was held in Patricia's office, a big corner conference room with a long polished table and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown. The kind of room designed to remind people that some battles are fought on paper, in silence, with coffee and legal pads instead of shouting. Erica arrived in a dark blazer, her hair done like she was going to an interview. She didn't come alone. Her mother, Diane, was right behind her, jaw tight, eyes full of hostility before a single word was spoken. Seeing her there told me everything about how this was going to go. Thomas, her lawyer, was younger than I expected. He looked tired. Maybe he'd already realized this wasn't the easy payday he thought it would be. We all sat down. Patricia's assistant brought coffee in real cups, not disposable ones. Erica wouldn't look at me. Her eyes stayed glued to the table. Thomas opened with the trust. Of course he did. "So," he began, glancing at his notes, "we're taking the position that the inheritance was received during the marriage and therefore should be considered part of the marital estate, subject to equitable distribution." Patricia didn't even flinch. She took out a copy of the trust and slid it forward. "The trust is irrevocable," she said calmly, "and explicitly excludes spouses from any claim to its assets. The funds never enter the marital estate. They are not, under any rational definition, marital property." Thomas shifted in his chair. "We could argue that the trust was created to defraud my client of her marital rights. That it was created in bad faith to hide assets during a separation." "You could argue that," Patricia replied, still perfectly composed. "And you'd lose. The trust was established after your client issued an ultimatum threatening divorce and voluntarily left the marital home. My client protected inherited assets from someone who made it very clear she was willing to end the marriage over money. That was never hers. That's not fraud. That's self-defense." That was when Erica finally spoke. Her voice shook, but her anger was unmistakable. "That money is supposed to be ours," she said. "We were married." "You filed for divorce," I said quietly. "Because you refused to share. Because you chose money over your wife. You gave me an ultimatum," I reminded her. "You said, access or I'm leaving. You left. This," I gestured around the room, "the documents, the lawyers, is the natural conclusion of your choice." Her mom leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "He's always been selfish," Diane said. "I told you that back when you started dating him. All he cares about is himself." Patricia lifted a hand, her patience steady but firm. Let's keep this productive. The facts are this: the trust is separate, the inheritance is separate, and your daughter has no legal claim to those assets. We're willing to negotiate marital property. But the trust is not on the table. Erica's face went red. A vein appeared at her temple, pulsing. She glared at me as if I'd stolen something from her. This is ridiculous, she said. You're hiding money that I deserve. I put 6 years into this marriage. I'm entitled to my share. You're getting your share, I answered. Of the marital assets. You're not entitled to my father's life's work. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Erica straightened her shoulders and fired her next demand. Fine, she said, voice tight. I want the house. Patricia didn't react. There's about $118,000 in equity, she said, flipping through her notes. You're entitled to half. That's $59,000. We can either sell and split the proceeds, or Marcus can buy you out. I don't want money, Erica snapped. I want the house. So you're demanding he buy you out or you'll force a sale? Patricia clarified. Yes. I'd already thought about this scenario. I'll buy you out, I said. You'll get your $59,000. I keep the house. Erica stared at me, surprised. I think she expected me to cling to every dollar, maybe beg her to reconsider. Instead, I was agreeing to pay her to walk away. Fine, she said, but the word came out bitter. And I want spousal support. I only make $28,000 a year. He makes more than 3 times that. It's not fair. Patricia leaned forward. You chose to work part-time. You're capable of full-time employment. The court isn't obligated to subsidize lifestyle preferences. Thomas tried to salvage it. We could argue for rehabilitative support, he suggested. Time for her to increase her earning potential. Patricia considered. Maybe, she conceded. But at best, we're talking short-term, relatively low monthly payments. You'd spend more chasing it in fees than you'd ever recover. You really want your client paying $5,000 in legal fees to maybe get $12,000 over a year or two? Thomas looked at Erica. The math was not on her side. She knew it. He should pay my legal fees then, she said. He has the money. No, I replied. I have an inheritance that's legally locked in a trust. It's not marital money. You wanted the divorce. You pay your lawyer. Diane muttered something under her breath about me being heartless. The word slid off me. At that point, I was just tired. We took a short break. Patricia leaned toward me. She's not done, she said. She's going to come back asking for specific items. Things that hurt. She was right. When we reconvened, Erica had a handwritten list on a yellow legal pad. She wanted the sectional from the living room. The bedroom furniture her grandmother gave her. My 65-inch TV. My first edition Asimov collection Dad had gifted me over the course of 20 years. My framed, signed basketball jersey from an old playoff game. She even tried to push. For my car, the fully paid-off Toyota Camry I drove to work every day. No, I said to each request, one after another. You owe me, she insisted. After everything. I owe you half the marital assets, as the law defines them, I answered. Not my father's books. Not my car. Not things that are mine or predate the marriage. She glared at me like I'd slapped her. Those books are worth thousands. You're just hoarding value out of spite. They were gifts from my dad over 2 decades, I said. They're not marital property. You know that. You're stealing from me. Patricia spoke up then, her tone cool. Requesting property you have no legal right to, after filing for divorce, is closer to attempted theft than what my client is doing. 3 more hours of back-and-forth negotiations followed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse, slow, grinding attrition. Like watching a bridge collapse in slow motion. By the end, we had an agreement. Erica would receive $59,000 for her half of the house equity. She'd keep her Honda Accord. She'd take her personal belongings and half of the furniture we bought together as a married couple. We'd split the small amount of credit card debt down the middle. No spousal support. Each of us responsible for our own attorney fees. When she picked up the pen to sign the settlement, her hand shook slightly. She looked at me with pure, focused hatred. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "I really don't think I will," I said quietly. 6 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. A judge's signature made it official. The marriage that began with vows and photographs and promises ended with stamped papers and a courtroom clerk's indifferent next case. I wired her the $59,000 from my regular savings. Watching that balance drop hurt more than I expected, but owning the house alone, without strings, without battles about who got what room, felt worth the price. I thought the hardest part was over. I thought the paperwork marked the end. I was wrong. That's when the real fallout began. First came the quiet war. Erica started telling everyone who would listen that I had hidden assets, tricked her, manipulated the system to steal what was rightfully hers. She never mentioned the ultimatum, the trust, or the lawyers. She just painted herself as the victim of some cunning financial betrayal. Mutual friends began reaching out. "Dude, what happened? She says you hid almost $1 million from her." My answers were simple, controlled. "We got divorced. It's done. I'm not fighting about it in group chats." Some people understood immediately. They'd seen enough of her behavior to put the pieces together. Others didn't. I lost a few friends, the kind whose loyalty turned out to be thinner than I thought. It hurt, but not as much as I expected. People who vanished that quickly probably weren't really mine to begin with. Then things escalated. One afternoon, I found a folded piece of notebook paper shoved into my mailbox, no stamp, no postmark. Inside was a handwritten invoice from Erica, demanding $14,500 for what she claimed were home improvements she'd personally funded during the marriage. It was absurd, itemizing things like curtain rods and paint and a coffee table we'd bought with our joint card. I took a picture and emailed it to Patricia. She responded with a formal letter to Erica. The divorce was final, the settlement complete, any further attempts to pursue claims outside the agreement would be treated as harassment. All contact was to go through her office. Erica texted me anyway, from a new number. "You destroyed everything. Hope you're satisfied. You're going to regret what you did to me. You're going to pay for this." After the 4th message, I blocked that number too. Her next move crossed a line. One day, my boss called me into his office. He closed the door and leaned against the desk. With a strange look on his face. "Your ex-wife's mother called the main line," he said. "Claimed you were involved in some financial misconduct and that there might be an investigation." For a second, I saw my career flash in front of me like a stack of documents catching fire. But then he added, "I told her not to call again. And I told her that our internal records and your time here don't suggest anything like that." I exhaled slowly. "I'm really sorry that dragged you into this." He shook his head. "Don't apologize. Just let me know if there's anything else we should be aware of. And if she calls again, HR will handle it formally." Patricia sent cease and desist letters to both Erica and her mother, warning them about further harassment and potential defamation issues. For about a week after that, everything went quiet. Then Erica tried something bigger. She filed a motion to reopen the divorce. Her claim was that she'd signed the settlement under emotional duress, that she didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to, and that there were still undisclosed assets, specifically the trust, that should be divided. When Patricia called to tell me, she actually sounded almost pleased. "This is desperation," she said. "She has nothing. But we have to respond formally. And honestly, I'm going to enjoy this." We ended up back in the courthouse, in front of the same judge who had finalized our divorce. He did not look thrilled to see our names on the docket again. Erica had a new lawyer this time. Older, more put together. Expensive suit. Polished shoes. This was not the budget option. She was spending real money chasing what she thought she'd been cheated out of. He stood up and argued that Erica had signed the agreement while emotionally overwhelmed, that she didn't grasp the consequences, that the trust was an attempt to hide marital assets. Patricia responded with a timeline. She laid everything out, Erica's ultimatum. Her decision to leave the house. The 3-week separation. The creation of the trust during that period, with the clear purpose of protecting an inheritance, not hiding assets. The full transparency in our financial disclosures. Erica's own acknowledgement of the inheritance during the initial process. She placed the trust documents before the judge, highlighting the irrevocability clauses and the explicit exclusion of spouses. I watched the judge read slowly, lips pressed together in a thin line. When he finally looked up at Erica, his expression was tired. Not angry. Just weary. "Ma'am," he said, "you were aware of this inheritance when you filed for divorce?" "Yes, but, and you had legal representation at that time?" "Yes, but my lawyer, did you sign the settlement after having the opportunity to review it with your attorney?" There was a pause. "Yes," she admitted. The judge folded his hands. "That is not fraud, Ms. Hayden. That is you not liking an outcome you agreed to. Your motion is denied." He paused, then added, "If you file further motions without substantial new evidence of actual fraud or coercion, I will entertain a motion for sanctions. That may include requiring you to pay your ex-husband's legal fees and additional penalties for frivolous litigation. Do you understand?" Erica's shoulders sagged. Her new lawyer stared down at his notes, suddenly very interested in the edges of the paper. "Yes, Your Honor," she muttered. "Good. We're done here." Outside the courtroom, she tried to come toward me, anger and desperation mixed together on her face. Before she could get too close, both attorneys stepped between us. "You took everything," she shouted from behind them. "You ruined my life for money you didn't even earn." "I took what was legally mine," I replied, my voice low but steady. "You chose to leave. You chose to file. You chose to fight for money that was never yours. You just don't like the consequences." "I loved you," she snapped. "I gave you 6 years. 6 years of my life. You gave me an ultimatum about my father's inheritance," I said. "You turned our marriage into a transaction. I believed you when you said you'd leave. That's all." Patricia tugged my sleeve gently. "Don't engage," she whispered. "It's over. Let it be over." And so, even with all the noise and all the drama, something inside me finally settled. The trust had held. The judge had spoken. The legal storm that had whirled around us for months finally began to lose strength. But the story of what happened to Erica, and what I learned watching it unfold, that part was still nowhere near finished. People think a story like mine ends in a courtroom, that once the judge bangs the final gavel, everything resets, the slate wipes clean, and life snaps neatly back into place. But that's not how endings work. Real endings happen slowly, in increments so small you barely notice the shift until one day you wake up and realize the storm isn't overhead anymore. It's behind you. And for the first time in months, the air feels breathable. About 4 months after the judge denied Erica's motion, I refinanced the house. 2.8% interest. I remember signing the papers and feeling something warm settle in my chest, a soft, steady certainty that the house was truly mine. Not ours. Not something waiting to be divided. Mine. I repainted the living room a darker blue, a color I'd always liked but Erica dismissed as too moody. I bought a new sofa, replaced the old wall art, changed the lighting. Little gestures, small acts of reclamation. But every nail I drove into the wall felt like stitching my life back together. The space finally felt like a home instead of a battlefield frozen in time. The spare bedroom became an office. I moved my bookshelves in there, Dad's Asimov collection, the engineering manuals he'd passed down, the framed blueprint of the first machine he ever built. I hung it above my desk. It's the first thing I see when I sit down each morning. A reminder of where I come from. A reminder of what, and who, I'm protecting. The trust kept growing too. Slowly, steadily, the way good investments do. I didn't touch it, didn't need to. Knowing it was there gave me a sense of calm I hadn't realized I'd lost during the marriage. It wasn't about the money, it was about legacy. Stability. The simple fact that something Dad worked his whole life for wasn't going to be drained by someone who only saw dollar signs. Lauren and I expanded the scholarship fund in his name. We increased it from 2 awards to 4, small amounts, but enough to make a difference for engineering students in our area. When the first thank you letters came in, I sat at my kitchen table and read every word. Students who'd grown up like we had, tight budgets, big dreams, a love of building things from scratch, writing about how the scholarship would give them breathing room their families couldn't afford. I could almost hear Dad's laugh, that low, proud rumble. It felt like the closest thing to healing I'd experienced since he died. During all this, my personal life didn't stand still. I'd started seeing someone, a math teacher named Jenna. We met at a friend's small cookout, both of us lingering near the same tray of grilled vegetables like introverts looking for refuge. She was funny in a quiet way, confident without being loud, and absolutely uninterested in anyone's bank account. The first time we went out for dinner, she insisted on splitting the check. When I tried to cover it, she shook her head. "I pay my share," she said. "I like being independent." That sentence shouldn't have hit me as hard as it did. But after everything with Erica, hearing it felt like someone opening a window in a house that had been sealed shut for years. I didn't tell Jenna about the inheritance right away. Not because I was hiding it, but because I'd learned the hard way that timing matters. When I finally did mention it, months into dating, she just raised an eyebrow and said, "Your ex gave you an ultimatum over money that wasn't hers." What exactly did she expect was going to happen? And that was it. No probing questions. No strategic compliments. No fishing for details. She simply accepted it as part of my history and moved on. I didn't know how badly I needed that until it happened. Meanwhile, the rumor mill kept turning. Diane, my former mother-in-law, continued telling anyone willing to listen that I had stolen from her daughter and ruined her life. I learned to ignore it. Most people who heard the story just nodded politely and changed the subject. A few believed her, but those were usually people who hadn't liked me much to begin with. Mutual friends sometimes relayed the gossip to me, not maliciously, just as an update. I trained myself to shrug. "Let them talk," Lauren told me once. "You know the truth. The people who matter know the truth. That's enough." She was right. Silence became my best defense. Every time someone tried to bait me into justifying myself, I refused. Refusing gave me back control. Not everyone took the hint, though. A few mutual friends, people I used to trust, started pushing me to help Erica out a little. They said she was struggling, that she'd burned through her settlement money too fast, that her mom's place wasn't a great environment, that I had the inheritance so I should be generous. At first, I calmly explained that the divorce was final, the settlement was signed, and I didn't owe her anything. When those friends kept pushing, kept turning every conversation into an attempt to guilt-trip me, I cut them off. Cleanly. Completely. I didn't yell. I didn't justify. I simply stopped responding. Losing people like that hurt less than I thought it would. The truth was simple: real friends don't demand you financially support someone who threatened to end your marriage unless you gave them access to money they never earned. Still, I sometimes wondered how Erica ended up. There's a human instinct, not love, not longing, just curiosity, to understand where someone's path leads after they collide with your life so violently. Eventually, the gossip network gave me the answer. She'd blown through the $59,000 in under 4 months. It sounded impossible, but the list made it clear: a new Nissan Pathfinder she didn't need, all new furniture for an apartment she barely furnished before, a 10-day trip to Aruba with her mother, constant online shopping, eating out 3 or 4 times a week. She helped Diane pay off some debts too, something Erica had always done impulsively. When the money dried up, she tried to get a personal loan. The bank called me to verify income because she listed me as a reference without asking. I told them I wasn't comfortable serving as a reference for my ex-wife. The loan was denied. She sold the SUV at a loss. Moved in with her mom for real, not just temporarily like she told people. Her part-time bookkeeping job wasn't enough to cover her bills, and when she finally asked for full-time hours, they'd hired someone else already. Eventually, she picked up a second part-time job at a retail store. And still, according to the rumors, she told anyone willing to listen that I had financially ruined her. Hearing it used to sting. But by the time Lauren told me all this, it barely registered. Emotional distance does strange things. It shrinks past pain until it feels like a story you once heard about someone you used to know. As for me, my life slowly, steadily recalibrated. Work became fulfilling again. My manager put me in charge of a new design initiative, small, but something Dad would have geeked out over. A few months later, I got promoted. The pay bump went straight to extra mortgage payments. I found satisfaction in that simple, methodical progress, watching the numbers shrink each month like watching a long race draw closer to the finish line. Jenna and I kept things slow. Dinners, hikes, museums, lazy Sundays with coffee and books. I learned what it felt like to be with someone who wasn't keeping invisible scorecards, who didn't measure affection in financial terms. For the first time in years, I felt normal. Stable. Safe. About 8 months after the divorce, Erica texted me again, from yet another new number. Just want you to know I'm doing great. Better than ever. Never needed your money anyway. Patricia had warned me about messages like that. They're not updates, they're fishing lines thrown into the water, hoping for any kind of tug, anger, guilt, regret, even pity. Anything to reopen a door that should stay closed. I didn't respond. The message turned into digital dust, swallowed by the silence I chose. And in that silence, I learned the most important lesson this entire ordeal had to teach me: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Believe them the first time they test your boundaries. Believe them the first time they weaponize love. Believe them the first time they turn partnership into leverage. Believe them the first time they make you choose between your values and their demands. Erica showed me who she was the moment she tied our marriage to my inheritance. She saw my father's legacy as a prize she deserved simply because she had a ring on her finger. She told me outright that she'd leave unless I gave her full control of something she never earned, never contributed to, and never had a legal right to. The ultimatum wasn't a mistake. It was a revelation. She expected me to fold, to prove my love by surrendering something sacred. She thought marriage entitled her to ownership of everything in my life, even the parts that existed long before she knew my name. She thought love meant control. I thought love meant partnership. We were both wrong, just in different directions. As the months passed, I realized something else too: her ultimatum might have been the best thing she ever gave me. Not because of the pain, or the legal battles, or the financial mess, but because it forced me to see the truth before kids got involved, before deeper roots were planted, before a decade turned into a lifetime. It freed me. And in that freedom, I found clarity, stability, and peace I hadn't known I was missing. Dad's trust kept growing, untouched. The scholarships expanded. My home finally felt like mine. My relationships were healthier, cleaner. Jenna and I continued building something steady, not rushed, not forced, not conditional. Life didn't snap back into place overnight, but piece by piece, it became whole again. Now, 14 months after the divorce, I can say this without hesitation: I'm better off. She's better off too, in whatever way she chooses to define it. And the version of me that once would have done anything to avoid losing a marriage. I don't miss him. Because the truth is simple, the right person won't issue ultimatums over money. The right person won't weaponize love for financial leverage. The right person won't see inheritance as a jackpot or marriage as entitlement. The right person won't feel threatened by boundaries, they'll respect them. And the right person won't leave when you say no, they'll stay because the relationship matters more than any dollar amount. My ex never understood that. But I do now. And that understanding? That's worth more than the inheritance she tried to take. It's worth everything.